Safety Nights Ergo Summit. Excited to have you here for day three of the summit. And specifically for this session, Future Proof Your Floors, the ergonomic edge of custom anti fatigue mats. But before we get started, a couple of things. I just want to say my contact information is in the chat. So if you have any questions about the summit or you just want to reach out and contact me, please feel free to use that. Additionally, we do have a PDF in the handout section, as well as a blog post, which you'll be able to access. You'll see it down in the left-hand corner of your screen. So feel free to check both of those out. And also a big thank you to Acromat for being one of our sponsors for the safety for the Ergo Summit. Honestly, we wouldn't be able to put something on like this without their support. So thank you. Having said that, now we'll jump into, let me introduce Russell. Russell has spent nearly 2 decades in the industry. He's visited hundreds of manufacturing facilities and really has spent the time to figure out what works and what doesn't work with anti-fatigue matting. And today he's here to share some of that knowledge and wisdom that he's learned over those 2 decades with us. So having said that, Russell, I'll turn it over to you. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for the warm introduction. Thank you to Safety Nights for putting on this Ergo Summit. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Russell Herbert, founder and general manager here at Acromat, and we're excited to be a sponsor for this week's Ergo Summit, and I'm excited to be here today to try and help you make sense of your anti-fatigue mats. Just a little disclaimer before we get started, I don't consider myself a public speaker, so I'm very passionate about anti-fatigue mats though, and I really want to share some of the experience that Dan just alluded to from my time visiting hundreds and hundreds of different clients in a lot of different industries. So hopefully we can bring some of that together and get you some action items and some tips that you can help take back to the companies that you support. So with that, we will jump right in. Today we're going to take a quick look at the state of the industry. We're going to talk a little bit about what solutions are being used and how they're being used. We'll talk about the rise in custom, not just in matting, but really across all industries, and how that is gaining a lot of traction and momentum. And we'll close with a step-by-step guide that you can use then to inspect and gain a full understanding of how your mats are performing. You may be supporting one facility, you may be supporting multiple, you may be assisting companies in their journey, and hopefully you can take these tools back with you and build that into your processes as well. So first up, just a quick about us. At Acromat, we are a custom anti-fatigue mat manufacturer based here in Minneapolis, and we design and build custom anti-fatigue mats for standing workers across a whole host of different industries: manufacturing, retail, food processing, environments, whether it be clean rooms, things like that. We specialize in custom mats, so mats that are designed to fit complex layouts, creating that seamless fit and eliminating trip hazards and ergonomic issues that can be caused by piecing together different types of solutions. We also have a proprietary mat builder tool. It's called AcroSketch, lives on our website, and it's been built to help design what the tool is capable of. You can also play around with that on our website at acromat.com. So anti-fatigue mats, they've been proven to support ergonomic health, but really for them to work properly and efficiently, we believe that the employees that are using them, they need to be able to stand on them all the time. So that means not on the edges, not half on, not half off, not sometimes on, not sometimes off, constantly stepping from one mat to another, but completely on the mat the whole time that they're performing their work. And that way they can really truly experience the cushion of the mat, get the maximum ergonomic benefit. So custom matting does make this possible, and that's why it's so important for us here at Acromat, and why we're excited to be a part of this week's summit and bring you what we have learned over 20 plus years in the matting industry. So for those of you that are focusing on floor safety or get involved in it, there's really five primary solutions used today we want to touch on. Number one is insoles. So if you've got employees that are moving back and forth across a facility, or for areas where mats are either impractical or unsafe, you can see that in the middle at the top there. And then the third one is buying rolls of anti-fatigue matting, full length rolls, and then cutting them by hand and kind of piecing that together. Similar to number two, but just with full rolls instead of standard sizes. And then the fourth one there you see on the bottom left, this is modular tiles. And those have really been a good step towards the custom solutions, because it does allow you some level of customization and configuration. And then lastly, we're talking here about custom fit mats. So that's a one piece single mat designed exactly to fit a particular work area. Single mat that is designed to seamlessly fit any complex layout. In the past, and even to today, safety leaders kind of assume that to use anti um, tiles, for example, you can piece those together, but they'll often they'll often miss. Work with um, hundreds of companies, some of the world's leading brands, and over 50% of the work we do are for custom designs. And as that number continues to rise, it really indicates that that demand for custom solutions is getting more and more as our workplaces become more complex, especially with all the lean initiatives that are happening in the workplace today. Um, One last thing I'd like to the tiles, those all lend themselves to mass production by the manufacturer. And unfortunately, what that means for the end user is that the manufacturers are subconsciously pushing end users to those type of solutions through their pricing and their marketing strategies. And that's because it suits the business model of manufacturing, not necessarily the needs of the end user. So we want to kind of keep that in mind as we're exploring, just be because it's more suited to the manufacturer than it is to the end user. So we're going to talk about the rise of custom. Um, why exactly are custom mats sort of gaining momentum, growing at such a high rate and pace? We've polled hundreds of safety leaders, production supervisors, manufacturing engineers, and other industry leaders over the past 2 years, specifically about this topic about anti fatigue mats. And one question that we asked was, what's your number one issue with anti fatigue mats? What's the number one complaint that you're receiving from your employees? And interestingly, 40% say that having to piece together rectangular mats to fill complex layouts is their number one issue, especially as it relates to health, safety, and ergonomics and the hazards that that could cause. So it really explains the increase in demand for custom solutions. I think it's traditionally hasn't been available, and so now that people are understanding that it can be done, it can be a solution. It's really helping to that um, drive that initiative forward. So moving on here, beyond frustration with having to piece mats together, these same leaders also indicated the challenges with the quality of the anti-fatigue mats. So firstly, we're talking about the shape and size. Now we're talking about the actual quality of the materials that are being used. And roughly 50% of the survey respondents, they say they expect their mats to last at least 2 years, yet over 70% say that they don't even last a single year. So you see a really big discrepancy here between the expectation and then what's actually happening. So digging into those issues specifically, we're talking about things like curling borders, mats sliding around, a complete loss of ergonomic cushion, in other words, going flat. Shape and size are super important, and certainly a piece of the puzzle that we want to focus on. But then also the materials that are being used and how the mats are made, how they're constructed, they also play equally a key role in how your mat program is going to be successful and how long it's going to last and perform into the future. So as you can see in the photos on the right, the two comparisons there, the diamond plate one with the arrow, there's a lot of curling. But being able to understand this issue has led us to be able to actually do a cut and bond approach, which allows us to guarantee. As we're talking about future proofing your floors, we want to help bring some of these learnings to the forefront so that we don't have to keep making those same mistakes. In addition to custom shapes and sizes, safety manufacturing leaders are beginning to demand better performance from their mats. And your mat provider, whoever that might be, they should be happy to explore with you how their mats are made and what they're doing to prevent the issues that you see on the screen. If it's something you've experienced in the past, certainly have a discussion with your provider and make sure that these things are being resolved so that you don't kind of keep going with the same old problem type mats that you've maybe been using in the past. So as we shift here in a minute onto how to inspect your mats and better understand the performance of them, um, what I want to say is that we've built this whole inspection process around these common issues that our audience have shared with us, things that I've picked up from being on site many times. That's how we've built this inspection process. And we want to help you be able to dig into these issues and understand how to resolve them going forward. So just before we jump into the inspection itself, just want to share a few slides here on how a few of the leading brands are utilizing custom mats, just to help bring in some context as to what we're talking about. What does this actually look like in real life, you might say? So here we've got Anderson Windows, and they replaced a lot of their modular tile mats throughout their facility because of the fact the seams were coming apart. So you see here on the left, exactly that is what's happening with a modular design, somewhat custom, certainly, but then you've got the failing seams, which is causing a lot of ergonomic and safety issues. And then you can see the comparison on the right, what a one-piece design looks like. Next case study here is Nokian tires. So previously dealing with mats that were sliding around a lot and then insoles that were wearing out too quickly, they chose to use these custom anti-fatigue mats along with our non-slip backing, which is called Gripper, and then custom designs that fit like a glove. So on the left, you see here wrapping around the lift tables, a one-piece design with built-in cable covers, and that eliminates any chance of the mats from moving or sliding. And then the one on the right, a super simple, small customization there of that little curved cutout at the front of the mat, and that helps the operator be able to stand on the mat entirely during his work shift and eliminating those ergonomic inconsistencies that had been present before. And then one last example before we move on, True Style Doors, Marvin Windows brand based in Iowa. And they had previously been hand cutting their roll mats and piecing them together. An operator actually tripped on where one of the gaps was. They rolled their ankle, tripped, and he missed several weeks of work because of the injury. They resolved their problem with the one piece custom design to fit each complex work area. And this one is actually one of my favorite case studies because whilst I was working with this client on this project, the EHS manager at the time at the site, he told me that the cost of replacing all of their standard mats with custom mats designed to fit for all of their workstations. Injury that was incurred when this employee fell over. So it just really highlights that an ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure. It really does ring true. It really is worth considering, especially when you think about the added costs, not only financially, but to the culture of the company, to the retention of employees, and things like that. There's so many things that really come into play when you start digging into this. Okay, so now let's jump into how you can expect your anti-fatigue mats. Custom, super exciting. We love talking about it, and it really is transforming how companies are using anti-fatigue mats. But not everyone has reached that point yet. We understand, we get it. There's a lot going on. Anti-fatigue mats might not be the top of your list for your to-do list for tomorrow. But what we want to talk about is how can you actually start making a move, start actually understanding what's happening, and then gaining some traction that way. So, as we talk about safety and ergonomic health here at the Ergo Summit, I want to pivot over now to giving you some tools that you can take away, gain that understanding. Over 75% of the audience that we surveyed, they either don't have a formal mat inspection process in place, or else they're unsure if they do. So inspection really is the first step in understanding what you're doing now and how it's performing. So we provide site inspections for hundreds of facilities every year, and we've distilled this down into just 5 simple steps, as you see here on the screen. So I'm going to walk through this process. At the end, you'll be able to step out with the tools you need to be able to assess the health of your mats. Don't worry about keeping up. As Dan mentioned, the download for this inspection checklist is there in the handouts. It's also available on our website, along with the blog post that is essentially unpacking these 5 points as well. So all that's available on the website too. So step number 1, locate the inspection checklist. Download it right now if you'd like from the handouts. Head over to the website, it's right there as well. And this includes the most common mat hazards that we like to document. And a lot of these have come from the feedback, not only in site visits, but the surveys that we've done. And on the website, the blog post that I mentioned, it's titled 7 Common Anti-Fatigue Mat Safety Hazards. And that helps to bring these to life as well. So quick note, all our content is free. There's no gates or forms to get through to get this. So it's all there on the website. You can kind of see that on the screen. Step number 2 is agree to a cadence for inspection and stay consistent. And I think consistency is the key here. Whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, it doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, whatever works for the companies you're supporting, that's fine. Just agree on a cadence and keep it consistent. And one of our clients at a Fortune 500 manufacturer had some great advice here. And I think this is something we've seen being used more and more. And that is to dedicate an operator to help with these inspections and then rotate those people out so that you get buy-in across maybe a whole lot of departments, a whole lot of levels of leadership and employees and so on. And then you can actually start to build that consistency with multiple different inputs from different people. So really great advice. And I think, as I said, the key here is consistency of whatever that cadence is right for your company. Step number 3, complete the checklist and file it away, and then combine your reports after each assessment. So as you do this, you can start to recognize the trends within the workplace. And obviously, I say file it away. If something is extreme and jumping out at you that needs attention, certainly act on it now. But what we're talking about here is starting to build some trends that you can recognize as you get this cadence going. So, for example, as you see on the screen here, you can simply write the area name or department name that you're assessing, and then start filling in some of this content based on what you're seeing. So you've got room here for comments or notes. You've also got some room for checkboxes or simple yes and no answers as well. Step number 4, it's always important to build feedback into the process from the people who are actually using your mats. And I can't really overemphasize this one, because it's not uncommon for us during the sample process, even early stages with a client, that the team leaders, the supervisors, the safety leaders, whatever they might be, they may have a strong opinion about a particular style of mat or the best approach to use. Well, you go to the operator and talk to them, and they may have a completely different feeling about what needs to be done, and they're the ones that are on the mat for 8 hours a day. So certainly talk to the people that are using the mats. As a mat manufacturer ourselves, we are asked so often about what's the best way to inspect your mats, and there is a process to it which we're going over, but we always come back to asking the people that are using them. Ask, listen, document. So stand on the mat alongside them, observe their movements, observe how they work, observe the challenges that they're facing, ask them specific questions. There's some good ones here on the screen that you can use. Come up with your own as well. Look for the visual clues. Um, and just before I move on from this point, it's equally important to not ask close ended, obvious questions that are not going to give you good information. And the reason I mention that is because I remember being with a safety leader once, going through a facility, and he kept asking these questions they were like, would you like a thicker mat, or would you like it if this mat had more cushion? And it's just obviously ineffective questions. It's not giving you any information that's helpful, that's going to be able to influence your decisions in the future. So just make sure that you're deliberate about the questions you ask, and that they're designed to get you the feedback that you're actually looking for. All right. Step number 5, just act. Now we've got a lot of things documented and in place. Now it's time to actually do something. So, anti-fatigue mats, they're unique because you don't have to break the bank to make a change. We're not saying you've got to completely wipe out everything you've ever done and start with a blank slate. What we're saying is start with a single area, start with the worst problem area that you've identified. You may have 50, 60% of the mats in your facility that are okay, that are not causing any problems right now. And that's fine. At some point, they will need to be replaced, but start with the problem areas and then weigh your options about what you can do there. So we recommend doing some thorough research with a couple of providers. Ask for full size free samples. That way you can trial the mats in your production facility and then follow the same steps that we walked through just now as you're working with those samples. Document the issues, document your findings and results. And I think the key here is that full size sample. I think it's important that you're insisting that you get something like that, to evaluate. So many times I've heard feedback from an end user that they say, "Oh, we don't like these ones. The mats are no good." And you say, "Well, give us some more examples of what the problem is." And they say, "Oh, it's just too small." Well, obviously, size really matters. You're not going to get true feedback on a little square or a little 2 by 3 if it's a big area. Go the whole hog. Get a full size sample. That way, you get to test not only the quality of the material, but the size and shape and the customability of that provider as well. And then the last point I'd like to make here is, please standardize. So, or uncover if you have a standard or not. So when you see areas that are filled with random mats and you've got 18 different kinds across the facility, the reason is because there's a lack of a standard. There's not one place to go, there's not one point of contact to use. And from the surveys that we've talked about already today, nearly 80% of the respondents have a standard with some other safety product. It might be safety glasses or PPE or something like that, but only 13% of them have a standard for matting. So there's a huge scope here. It can be a quick win. You guys have, these companies have already standardized with something. Well, why not roll that in and standardize with anti-fatigue mats? Use what you learned in that process and apply it to your anti-fatigue mat approach. It brings so much benefits in terms of safety and ergonomics as well as cost saving. So it just simply means uniting your anti-fatigue mat approach into a documented process. Everyone knows where to go and exactly what to order and how. We don't have time to guide you through the whole process today, but if you ever need a hand with it, we are available. We'll be happy to guide you through that process. If you're a partner of ours or not, it doesn't matter. We're happy to help. So in closing, hopefully this has been helpful. There's the QR code for the checklist, but you can download that also from the handouts, which Dan helpfully put in there. You can also visit our website, acromat.com, anytime, and you'll find the checklist there. The ebook is there, and then the blog post that we mentioned as well, all walking through these steps. So with that, I'd like to jump into any questions. I should have mentioned at the beginning that we'll be getting to questions at the end. So if anybody has questions that I can help with, certainly welcome to do that now. Put a question in the chat. And if there's any that we don't get to today, not a problem. We'll be happy to get back with you on any unread questions later. So
Russell, it looks like we have a question from Caesar in the chat. That's he's asking, how long have you seen acromats last for?
Yeah, great question, Caesar. Thank you for that. So our life expectancy is 3 to 8 years. I've seen mats last 10, 12 years. It really comes down to the environment in which they're in. So if you can imagine a 24/7 shift with oils, coolants, metal shavings, things like that, that's going to bring the life expectancy down. If you're in a 8 hours a day at a checkout or something like that, where there's not any machine waste, those ones last a lot longer. So 3 to 8 is our life expectancy, depending on the environment, and certainly we've seen the extreme both ways on that. So hopefully that helps. But that was a good question. Any other questions from the team? Dan, do you have anything else or?
No, all I can say is I will never look at matting the same way again. I mean, I don't know how many times I have seen mats, and now, I look at them and I think back, wow, were these even mats that we, should be used, or were they even in good shape? And now I can't imagine having heard all of this and learning more, looking at a mat and not be going through literally maybe this checklist in my mind. So, all I can say is thank you for sharing that with us today. I think that I know I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else has too.
Yeah, I think what you said there is a good point, because mats are they're on the floor. We don't usually walk around looking at the floor, most of us, and they're often just kind of the last thing to get noticed. I often say they're the last thing to be noticed, but the first thing to be blamed when something goes wrong or an accident happens. So what we want to do is just kind of elevate that in your mind, so that you're proactive. Because if we can prevent these injuries, ergonomics, safety, whatever it is, prevent it ahead of time, it's just worth a little bit of effort, and it can be a huge impact. So
yeah, I think you really that statement right there, the last thing you notice, but the first thing you blame. That's so true. And I'm just thinking about, like, every time I trip over something, and yeah, that's the immediate, like, why is that there? Why is that in the way? But you're right. This, I think, is really, again, a really important topic to be talking about, especially with ergonomics. I think about, again, everything we've talked about so far this week, and everything we're going to be talking about later this week. And everything is, for the most part, involves standing on your feet, moving heavy equipment, things like that. And you do that over and over and over again, repetitively, for just one shift. And I mean, that's a toll on your body. So I think really understanding and seeing how matting can come in and make a huge impact in terms of, one, is it being used correctly? And two, is it making a difference in which, and one of the questions I noticed is, like, that you had on one of the slides was, are your legs, back, and neck tired after a shift? And it's, thinking about how many people might have answered that question, yes. that's probably a pretty large number, and how much of that comes down to the matting. So again, thank you. I do want to say I did toss the Acromat link in the chat. So feel free to copy paste that and use that so you can learn some more. And again, before we leave, grab the handout, click on the link for the blog post. And if we don't have any other questions, I guess all I can say at this point is, Russell, again, thank you. Thank you to Acromat again for sponsoring. Wouldn't be able to have a summit without you and Acromat. So thank you very much.
Great. No, thank you for Safety Nights for putting it on. It's been great. Thank you for all that attended, and wish you all the best for the rest of the sessions.
Thank you. And yes, speaking of next session, in case anybody's wondering, we have our next session, 1 p.m. Eastern. It's titled Identifying Risk Made Easy with 3D AI Motion Capture. So hopefully we'll see everybody there. And again, thank you, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Good. Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Bye. Have a good one.